Hey everyone, welcome back to Reboot, GameSpot's opinion editorial show. I'm Mike Mahardy.
And I'm Jake Decker.
And last week, we published an episode about Cuphead and how that sparks a conversation around the challenges that developers come into when they're talking about difficulty in games. Cuphead, if you don't know, for a lot of people is very difficult, but it was designed, to be a more challenging platformer, run-and-gun shooter. It's one of my favorite games of the year. Jake, you've also played a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. I love it. It is tough. But it's definitely that's part of the design, right? It's just built to trial and error. You figure out, like Dark Souls.
Yep.
I mean, not a whole lot more to say than what you already said about it.
A lot of people, I think, saw the title of our video and thought
immediately went to the comments.
Yeah, I think they were saying I was saying that Cuphead has a problem with difficulty, which wasn't my point at all. That was just like the one that gave spark to the idea of like, if you buy a game, are you entitled to see all of it? My personal opinion usually, that was the thing. I didn't have necessarily an opinion on this. I do think that games that can figure out ways like Shadow of Mordor or Resident Evil 4 or Left 4 Dead or XCOM 2, Fire Emblem, any games that can figure out a way to play with difficulty in a creative way are more impressive to me than games that are specifically designed to be, accessible or specifically designed to be hard. But I love Cuphead for what it is, and it's not any less impressive than the other ones because it's hard. I think it's just very admirable when developers can find creative loopholes. But went through the YouTube comments and the GameSpot comments, found ones that were actually constructive, that clearly watched the video. So I'll get right into them. The first one I think was part of a bigger debate. Dave Rabbit 1 on YouTube said, "The real problem is that more players nowadays don't realize that game devs don't owe you anything. Difficulty is a major component of the developer's vision, and drastically warping it just because some people might not like it is pure nonsense. It would be like being mad at an artist for using the color red in a painting and then protesting to make them change it to blue. This gets even more important when the game in question is made by a small independent team. Games like Cuphead are a product of love and passion, in this case from Studio MDHR. They are made following a specific concept and stay true to it because the developers care about it and want to make something exactly the way they envision. They are not making the game for you, they are making it because it's their dream." I think this was one of the bigger questions that the episode gave rise to. Two things. I kind of agree with this. I do think that there's two ways of looking at it. There's one way you're looking at games as expression on the developer's part. Not to sound too pretentious about it, but it is. It's people making this thing that they love. Studio MDHR, there's a few people, but the two principal people are the Moldenhauer brothers who are making it, Chad and his brother, and I think they're right. If they made this game less difficult, it wouldn't be Cuphead. But I do think that they still have to have an audience in mind rather than trying to appeal to the masses, which that's the one thing I wanted to clarify. I don't think Resident Evil 4 appeals to the masses. I don't think Left 4 Dead appeals to the masses because they have these dynamic difficulty kind of sliders. I think that actually just makes it more impressive that developers can find creative ways around that problem of how do we get different players into it. But I don't know, Jake, like you were saying with Cuphead, you find it, the difficulty is intrinsic to it. Do you think that games all need to be accessible, or there can be games that are made for specific subsets of people, a la Cuphead or Dark Souls or something like that?
No, I mean, I do not think every game should be accessible to everyone. I love the fact that Cuphead is really hard. I love the fact that some people may not be able to see the whole thing. I mean, I don't love that. I don't love that some people are going to get stuck and frustrated and not finish the game. But I definitely think that was part of their vision, and it makes total sense that this game is so difficult. I myself, I've not finished Cuphead. I'm on the last world now, and it is very hard. And I think the biggest difference is that with Cuphead, with Dark Souls, is that it's not really about difficulty as much as about persistence. And I think that is a very important part. That is a very important part of the game. Like, when I play a boss, it's like, all right, whether it be Dark Souls or Cuphead, I'll play it a couple times, be like, okay, I think I'm starting to figure this out, try it again. They'll go to the next phase. All right, I'll die, try it again, try it again, try it again, try it again. In order to get that satisfaction, you have to have that difficulty. And sure, you could have a slider, and I think with a AAA game, they would definitely need a difficulty slider, a way to make the game easier, which they do. But it's kind of it's not a very good difficulty slider, I guess, or not a very good difficulty option.
Yeah.
But I think with a game that small, I think it totally makes sense for it to be that hard and require that much persistence. Because otherwise, I think it would just be a pretty looking game. I don't think there'd be much more to it.
Yeah, they sold 1 million copies, which is awesome for them.
Yeah.
The small studio from Toronto, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And and I'm not surprised. It's a fantastic game. It might be in my top 5 of the year. Definitely top 10. Time will tell. A lot of good games out this year. But, yeah, I find Cuphead much harder. Like, people are comparing it to Dark Souls. I think that's honestly, like, a trite comparison. I think it gets
sick of that.
tiresome just because they're difficult. I am one of those people, not to sound elitist, I don't think Dark Souls games are that hard. I think compared to Cuphead, they have way more room for error.
Yeah, I think the thing with Dark Souls 2 in particular is that you can definitely, like, if you're fighting a boss too tough, what you do is you just grind, you know?
Yeah, it's an RPG.
You level up, you grind, you get yourself more prepared, you upgrade your weapons. With Cuphead, it's like, all right, like, didn't work, just keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, and I think that's the point. You play like 2 hours until you finally beat the boss. Actually, I don't think a boss taken me 2 hours yet, but I have spent a long time on some bosses.
Found that you do need to develop your skills more in Cuphead than in Dark Souls. Dark Souls with the I mean, there's more. You have a whole Z-axis to work with that you can dodge on, and a lot of bosses, you know, have those little the frames where they can't hit you, and that's key to that. But
and Dark Souls also has the buddy system.
Sure, yeah, and we touched on it. I mean, buddy system, like, From Software's games are brilliant. I think the order that I like them in is Bloodborne, then Dark Souls, and then Demon Souls, Dark Souls 3, and then 2. But I think all of them are great because they have options for people who want to see all of it and, like, live in this world, but, you know, want to play co-op maybe, or, you know, like, summon a friend, or, you know, just an NPC, or just start with an easier class rather than the deprived, go with a sorcerer, etc. But that's why I brought that up, and I thought Dark Souls, in that case, was a relevant comparison.
So the next one is from Muddy on YouTube, and he says, I'm getting a bit older now and feeling the arthritis in my hands, and it prevents me from playing games like Cuphead, as I know I won't be able to complete them. So it can kill some gamers' enjoyment and hurt their sales. Having difficulty options just seems like common sense.
Yeah, we touched on this briefly. Unfortunately, I'm not super well versed, and I know there's like a lot of sites and charities like Able Gamers devoted to, you know, accessibility in games in terms of literal motor functions and, you know, like other obstacles that me and you don't face every day, us for instance. And I touched on it later. I said some people need specially made controllers for their, you know, they don't have the same motor skills as everybody else, or they're a little bit less dexterous or have less effective motor skills. That's awesome that charities like that exist. And it sucks for people. Like Muddy mentioned, like, his arthritis prevents him from playing something like Cuphead that, you know, a lot of people have carpal tunnel syndrome that can mess with that, but then there are things that are worse, right? Like, not everybody has the same active nervous system that allows them to play tough games like this. Imagine it must be pretty frustrating for people like Muddy or people that, you know, like, write for Able Gamers to go into a game hoping to see it all, but knowing they physically cannot, no matter how much time or patience or perseverance they have.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But yeah, Muddy, unfortunately. Cuphead's a great game, but at the very least, look it up on YouTube. It's not the same at all, but it's worth seeing how, like, the great design that went into it.
Yeah, I mean, you'll miss the satisfaction of defeating a boss, but I still think it's totally worth it just to see the animation, the design, the characters. It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right, cool. And the last comment comes from our site on GameSpot. Richard III, it was a really long, largely critical comment, so we welcome those. So I just wanted to put the last part, because this touches on something that we touched on in the episode. Being challenged, that's about 90% of the reason I play them instead of watching movies, talking about games. If I ever get to where I don't have time for games anymore, I won't sit around and ask them to change as a whole. What bullshit. Again, if you watch the video, we talked about how not everybody plays games for the same reason. Richard III plays them to be challenged. I do the same thing most of the time. Other people play it for escapism, getting into, you know, the Northern Kingdoms and The Witcher, to just explore that. Some people play them for the story. I usually don't, but I love when they can tell a good story around a good gameplay. Some people play it for finding their own stories in Shadow of Mordor or Prey or Dishonored. People play games for different reasons. People play Destiny 2 to catch up with their friends or their siblings, like myself, they haven't spoken to in a while. That's where my problem becomes, like, not everybody plays for the challenge. Richard III, that's great you do. I do too. Like I said, Bloodborne's one of my favorite games. Not just to sound like, oh, I have gamer cred or whatever, because I love Bloodborne, but I play different games for different reasons, and again, in the video, we talked about that. But I'm not saying every developer needs to cater to every kind of person who plays. I just think I would like to see more creative uses of difficulty, a la Resident Evil 4, Shadow of Mordor, Dark Souls.
I kind of agree with you. I think the biggest reason I play games is for escapism, immersion. I think that is something, in my opinion, that I can't really get anywhere else. Although, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like Cuphead, is because the world is so well designed, in my opinion, and it's the art design that is why I keep playing it. It's not necessarily the difficulty. While I do love the feeling of beating a boss, and that honestly can't really be matched.
A knockout.
Yeah, exactly. That can't be matched except by another game, right? But, I mean, most of my time I spend playing RPGs like The Witcher, wearing a fucking shirt of it, Divinity.
Chill.
Like, I've been playing a lot of Divinity, and that game is hard as well, but I don't play it because the challenge. I play it because I want to play with a friend.
Yeah.
And I think the world is great, and I love all the little stories that get told throughout that, whether they be guided by the developer or they're guided by yourself.
Yeah. We have a busy week coming up. So the next episode will be October 29th. October 27th is that amazing / crazy day that is Super Mario Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Origins, Wolfenstein 2, the new Colossus. So we have a few ideas we're tossing around. I kind of have like an idea for each game. I just need to get my hands on each of them.
We should do a 3-parter.
Jesus. That'd be crazy. Saturday, Sunday, Monday episodes. Me and Jake will talk about more. I can't tease specifically what we're going to talk about. We actually did go along with what we teased last episode with Cuphead, but we have a tough decision ahead of us. Maybe we'll do a video outside of Reboot or something if we do have something we really want to say about both games. Other than that, I'm sure we could still talk about Super Mario Odyssey after, like, the next episode, 2 weeks after, because that game is, from everything that we've seen, I'm assuming that game will be great and still worth talking about.
You should find a way to tie all 3 of them together and in one video.
I'll try.
Yeah.
I'm not making any promises.
They're all on the Nintendo Switch. That's not true.
Wolfenstein. Super Mario is. Wolfenstein is next year.
Assassin's Creed is not at all.
Nope. But we'll figure something out. Either way, there's a lot of source material to work with. But as always, thank you for joining. Thank you for commenting on YouTube or GameSpot. Check back every Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific. That is 2 p.m. Eastern if you're in the United States. We have an episode every other Sunday, and then we do these episodes, Q&A episodes, on the off week. And we always appreciate your comments, concerns, criticisms. And thank you so much for being part of the show, and we'll see you next week.